You're listening to Barbell Logic,
the podcast where we talk about what it means to experience strength
and how you can use simple, hard, and effective strategies in training and nutrition to improve your life.
It starts with meeting you where you are right now and finding lasting solutions.
Welcome to the show.
Hey everybody, welcome to Barbell Logic, to Beast Over Burden. I'm your host, Niki Sims. I'm the Chief Experience Officer at Barbell Logic. I'm also a strength and nutrition coach. And with me is your favorite host, Andrew Jackson. He is the Chief Operations Officer, also a strength and nutrition coach. What's up, Andrew?
Good afternoon. Ready to talk about more investment advice?
Investing in our future. Yes, that's like so hot right now. Just like investing in future. Just making deposits into happiness.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
It must be Friday.
Yes, double Sunday this weekend, so pretty stoked about it. Also, it actually really is cool to learn more about actually figuring out how to take steps that plan for like comfort and happiness. And we've been talking about that a lot lately with our training. And you and I have been talking about it quite a bit with finances.
Obviously talked a lot about YNAB. Shout out to Jesse Meekum. Once again, amazing tool for managing the cash that you have essentially as it's coming in and assigning it to different jobs. And one of the jobs of money, I think, or at least one of the great uses of money is putting it into an investment so that you can trade that money for your time basically at some later point in the future if you invest wisely. So I came across this recommendation for a book called The Psychology of Money, talking a little bit more about behaviors around money that we learn that are based on how we're brought up, what generation we're brought up, what experiences we have throughout our lives, and being kind of deconstructing some of those things to think about more first principle approaches to thinking about money. And it caught my attention relative to training. About a third of the way into the book, there was a term used that I'd never heard before, and yet I came across it in this book called The Psychology of Money. I think the phrase barbelled personality has been used elsewhere. I don't know that it was this author that coined it, but
What is a barbelled personality?
Definition given in the book is a barbelled personality is someone who is optimistic about the future, but paranoid about what will prevent you from getting to the future. That really kind of caught my attention, and it put me thinking about strength training while I'm reading this book. And if you read the back cover, I think you kind of latched onto that right out of the gate. You're just kind of reading a synopsis of the book.
Yeah.
Starts to sound like the same things that you think about when it comes to training for the long run, right?
Totally. You know, we talk a lot about building muscle and what that actually means and what you have to behave to do it and how you have to behave to make body composition changes through your nutrition, and that it really is a long-term investment. It's a long series of behaviors and actions, and it's not about an 8-week thing. It's about months and then years, actual years. And definitely picked up on that as I was reading the book, is that it takes such a long time to recognize the benefits of it. And right now I've really trainings that I can have muscle when I'm in like my 50s and 60s. And like we have to do that now. It's not something that we can start when we're, 59. It's something that we need to start now. Just like money.
There's no such thing as a get rich quick scheme, just like there's not a get jacked quick scheme.
Yeah.
And financial investment, good financial investment takes advantage of compound interest, which really gets powerful over long periods of time. And I think the same is true with strength training behaviors. So you want to develop good financial investment behaviors, just like strength training behaviors, so that you get the real benefit during that period of time in the future in which all of those behaviors compound gradually over time in a really powerful way. And
like bad behaviors can compound just like good ones. So you get to choose what you want the payoff to be at the end.
Yeah. And interestingly, in this book, they talk about not specific, go invest in this, go invest in that, but that a lot of it comes down to your personal preferences. Just also like with training, what training behaviors you have are going to be influenced by what your goals and your priorities are, and your tolerance for risk of injury or risk of trading off that time that could be spent on other things. So it's very similar in my mind that there's no one right way to do it. There are trade-offs that you have to make in order to align your behaviors with your goals and priorities.
And going back to the Bright Build personality is that you can still be excited. A lot like when it comes to like nutrition coaching, sometimes we automatically assume that's going to mean taking things away and changing life so that you're having to say no to a lot of things. But we like to coach nutrition where it's creating behaviors that actually make you feel good. And I think that's similar is you create behaviors that set you up to be happy in the long term. And I think that's the right way to approach nutrition coaching is you could be happy now and you can be happy in the long term. But you still have to kind of have your guard up about, what about this situation? What about this situation? And I see that a lot in coaching. Like we were talking about a couple of podcasts ago, like you have to plan. You decide what you want and then you plan. And that planning means that you're deciding on the behaviors that you're going to engage in because that's what you want.
You mentioned this book inspired some of the thoughts that you were talking about. What was the progression there?
Halfway through this book, when we were getting ready to have that lifting seminar down in Seattle, and we were just coming together on what we were going to present on. And I was like, well, I can present on something. And the thought occurred to me, the people in this seminar, while we had one or two who were newer to lifting, the others have been longtime clients. They've been lifting for a long time. And, how is this message, like what message is important to them? And so I thought about calling out the behaviors that they've demonstrated that make someone lift forever and the things that you encounter when you lift forever. And that reminded me of this book where it's a series of behaviors over a long period of time. But also the concept in this book is like, you get to where you are because of your history, like you were saying earlier, like how your parents acted around money, what type of financial status you grew up in, or what you were taught was okay to spend money on and what wasn't, how you emotionally kind of act out through spending habits and how you have to kind of forgive yourself for that and be patient. And so that made me think of like, there were a lot of things that brought us to a certain point in time, the now, where we'll decide this is good, this is what I want, or we'll decide like this is not what I want anymore. And then you have to act a certain way for a long time to build muscle and to have a good relationship with your body. And that's exactly what he was talking about in this book is like to have a good relationship with your finances. But it's from behaviors, but it applies to like everybody. We've coached so many people that model really works for everybody. It's like the behaviors that you engage in. It's not like investing in a certain fund or, starting with a certain amount of money before you can do anything. It's stuff that you can do right now. And yeah, so the inspiration for that mental model actually came from this book, The Psychology of Money.
That's cool. Did you want to read the back cover that?
Yeah, like listen to this. And as you listen, imagine how you can replace some of these words with like training or strength or nutrition. Here's the back. Doing well with money isn't necessarily about what you know. It's about how you behave. And behavior is hard to teach, even to really smart people. Money, investing, personal finance, and business decisions is typically taught as a math-based field, where data and formulas tell us exactly what to do. But in the real world, people don't make financial decisions on a spreadsheet. They make them at the dinner table or in a meeting room, where personal history, your own unique view of the world, ego, pride, marketing, and odd incentives are scrambled together. In Psychology of Money, award-winning author Morgan Housel shares 19 short stories exploring the strange ways people think about money and teaches you how to make better sense of one of life's most important topics.
Almost could be one for one about strength or nutrition.
Totally. Exactly. And because there's this dissonance that we see in training and nutrition. You and I were just talking about this last night, and we see it in money too, where it's just like someone will be so unhappy with their bodies and not understand how what they're eating or how they're moving or not moving has anything to do with it. And same thing with finances. Like, why am I in debt? Why can't I get ahead and not have the ability to connect that with like their spending habits or going into a lot of debt, stuff like that, where there's this weird dissonance. So yeah, totally able to cross over. And he has this series of, is it bits of advice at the end?
I think it's the last chapter. He leads with a long caveat saying, there's again highlighting that you need to understand your own psychology around money to make the decisions around the behaviors that you want. He's got some pretty generalized recommendations in there, but then he goes into kind of specific psychological recommendations for how to approach your behaviors around money. And as I'm reading through this list, just like that back cover, I'm thinking these are almost one for one applicable to strength training.
Totally.
So the first one, as an example, go out of your way to find humility when things are going right and forgiveness/compassion when they go wrong.
I mean, come on.
That, to me, I think we may have said those exact, or a version of those exact same words when you were talking about being in the now.
Yes.
Being kind to yourself.
Right.
When you miss the 5th rep or you have an off day, that you've got to forgive and have compassion for things going wrong, or you tweak your back.
Right.
And then also when you're on a tear with PRs, stay humble because things are going to go wrong inevitably. So enjoy it. But I thought that was pretty much one for one.
So perfect. It was like, things are never as good as they seem and things are never as bad as they seem. That's a
right.
useful reminder there. And this next one, less ego, more wealth.
Right.
So how can you relate that?
Well, this one, in his example specifically, is talking about, his quote is, saving money is the gap between your ego and your income. But I think that the transferable idea could be less ego, more health, less ego, more strength.
Yeah.
But everybody, you've probably heard the term ego lifting.
Yeah.
And I have certainly encountered that when my ego gets in the way, which I think what that sounds like in my head is I should fill in the blank.
Oh, okay.
I should be this, I should be that, or I am this thing. And it's like some gap from what I actually am or kind of what I think I am and what I actually am, based around some self-image around my ego. Like my most recent back injury, for a long time, I think I was just exacerbating the symptoms because my ego wouldn't let go of the fact that I thought I was, I should be deadlifting a certain amount of weight. And I would warm up like I was when I was pulling well over 500 regularly. I would warm up the same way as when my back was hurting and I could barely lift 400 pounds. And
kind of in denial.
Yeah, I just wasn't accepting reality and choosing behaviors that fit the current situation or my long-term goals, really. So, in his financial example, it's your savings is going to be what you're able to set aside from your income so that you're not, living some life, spending to support some sort of lifestyle that your ego thinks is what you should be.
Yeah, it's about buying the car so that people think you're impressive, or it's about spending money on XYZ so that people think that you're rich, when being wealthy is like the money that people don't see. And I equate that to people thinking they need to be in a perpetual deficit and have abs, when really that doesn't make them feel good. It's for show and not for like long-term health. Love this one.
Manage your money in a way that helps you sleep at night. Manage your training in a way that helps you sleep at night.
Yeah. Like it's got to fit into your life.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny that it translates to the physical realm, because there is a point where you can train so hard or your nutrition can be so much of a deficit, it actually impacts your sleep.
Yeah. Your hormones get messed up and you really actually can't sleep.
Or actually, I had a client today who had a nutrition call with his coach, Ben Patterson, and he just left a note in mine that said, hey, I had my call today and we were just talking about how training is really the anchor that impacts so many other things in my life, like sleep and nutrition. And that time spent in the gym has a lot of ROI on my life beyond just what I do in that hour. He's just noticing that it affects his sleep. He sleeps better when he's training regularly.
It's the ripple effect.
Yeah. Now, in the financial example, it's more about risk tolerance.
Yeah.
There could be some investment strategy that's technically more optimal. But if you sleep better at night taking a lower risk strategy, then that's the better strategy for you. For him in particular, it was about his approach to buying a home. And, that was his personal example that even he knows it's not the most that he could get his return on that money, but he's got so much more peace of mind and can sleep better at night because he's paid off his house and doesn't have the house payment. But for somebody lifting, that could be maybe you don't have the optimal program in terms of hypertrophy. There's so much arguing about who's got the optimal training program. It's just
like, what's the best spreadsheet? What's the best template? What's the best meal plan on paper when it's not actually really applicable?
But if you can't live the life that you want or fit training into a way that you can recover, it's not going to be a good strategy for you.
And then this one basically was the premise to that concept that I had. If you want to do better as an investor, the single most powerful thing you can do is increase your time horizon. Like, start now. Just start. Just freaking do it. If it's $50, if it's, when it comes to training, if it's lifting twice a week, like, freaking do it.
Yep.
Meeting more and more people who are, in their 40s and 50s, and they're just like, I got to start now. I have to do it. And, imagine if we had all started, in our 20s. I know some of you have, but like, same thing with lifting. You're investing. Every rep is an investment. It's another rep in the bank of muscle.
I think about that too as a cue to step back and look at a longer time horizon. So I like your take on it because it's act now so that your time horizon is extended.
Yeah.
But I also like thinking about your training or your investments from a zoom out to a longer time horizon.
Totally.
If we think about your training as a lifetime activity that you want to do until you can't, that influences decisions that you make today. When I first started training, for example, I put so much priority on adding weight every single session or optimizing 3 to 6 months of my training in the bigger scheme of a long life of training, that kind of time horizon. It's completely trivial what I did on any particular day. That duality of every day counts, but no one day matters so much that,
like there's more after that lifting day.
Yes. There's probably going to be decades after that lifting day.
Yeah. Ideally.
I love this next one. Become okay with a lot of things going wrong. You can be wrong half the time and still make a fortune. Again, 1-for-1 training.
Yeah, you can miss a training day and it's going to be okay. You're going to be all right. You can miss a rep. You're going to be okay.
Yes.
Like, give yourself some grace and you can still be jacked.
Well, yeah, and it just comes back to that consistency is going to be the king for your training and your investments. And even if you have those off days, keep going. It'll pay off.
I'm going to pick one that's a little further down the list.
Okay.
Define the game you're playing.
Yes.
I think that is so important when it comes to training, about setting your expectations and keeping your training focused in one direction. There are times when I've heard people have really conflicting goals where they come in lean and they want to gain muscle and lose weight. Those are two trains going in different directions. So you have to really define, your training outcome that you're after, and same thing with your finances. Like, what are the rules in that game? And make sure that you're sticking to it instead of trying to do 10 different things that are going to go in 10 different directions. So super big carryover to strength and nutrition. You're trying to gain weight and you've been training for a while. Like, you can't eat at a deficit if you're trying to also build tissue. Those two things don't go together.
Yeah. And the follow-up to that line is make sure your actions are not being influenced by people playing a different game.
Ooh. Mm-hmm.
So if you see somebody who's jacked to the gills on all kinds of performance-enhancing drugs and dedicating their entire life to training and being shredded, or spending a year and a half bulking and then cutting to look like a movie star.
Yeah.
Back to our Jake Gyllenhaal episode. Is that really the game you want to play?
Right.
Like, do you really want to, understand that that takes a certain level of effort, sacrifice, and commitment, and decide whether that's really the game you want to play, or is there a different one that has a different training component to it.
That's right for your life and for what's important to you. Yeah, that's a really important one.
So at this one, also perfect example for most of our clients. Avoid the extreme ends of financial decisions. Avoid the extreme ends of training decisions.
I'm going to train 7 days a week, all the things, or I'm going to train 0 days a week.
And I'm going to eat 1,000 calories a day.
In meat only.
With a feeding window of 2 hours in the afternoon.
Yeah. And I'm going to spend all the money on mattresses and supplements and anything that the internet tells me to spend money on.
Yeah.
But not actually backing it up with behaviors. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And the last one, and there are more. I encourage you, if you're interested in this book, pick it up.
The others are a little bit more gray, harder to move exactly.
But they're still fun.
Yeah.
This will be the last one. It's respect the mess. Smart, informed, and reasonable people can disagree in finance because people have vastly different goals and desires. There is no single right answer, just the answer that works for you.
Boom.
Love that.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with training and going back to know your game that you're trying to play. Along with fads and people trying to market all kinds of crazy gimmicky things, there's also the fact that with every single one of those gimmicks, there was a goal or a desire embedded in there that may or may not even be a good fit for you.
Yeah.
And I think it's definitely worth, again, having that barbell personality approach to it, that you've got to be optimistic and yet paranoid that there's a whole bunch of things that are going to prevent you from getting there. And the only way to to cut through the mess is to be clear on who you are and what you want.
It makes me think of one of our training philosophies that, like with our coaches and with our programming philosophy, like we don't try and cram a person into a program. We actually make the program work for the person.
Client-centered.
Yeah, very client-centered and
model-informed. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes me think of this too, where it's just like some program might be great for another person at some point in time, or it might have been great for you at one point of your life, but it's got to evolve to keep it working for you. And that's okay, because you're where you are when you have behaviors that are focused towards kind of outcome like this. The you in like May of 2024 is going to be different than the you in May of 2025 if you want to do that. And so you have to let things change around that, which I think is cool.
That feeds right back into the avoid extreme ends of the financial decisions. Everyone's goals and desires will change over time, and the more extreme your past decisions were, the more you may regret them as you evolve. That immediately flashes me back to Go Mad Andrew. Milky boy, 285 pounds, extreme end of the nutrition spectrum of decisions that I could have made. And that's definitely one that I wish I could do over again.
Good lessons learned.
I'm not gonna beat myself up over past decisions, but I think that's a perfect example of where I think I probably could have gone with a less extreme decision and probably would have a little bit less regret about that. But anyways, it's just kind of interesting how it all kind of connects together.
Yeah. So good.
There we go.
There we go. If you're interested in this book, again, it's called The Psychology of Money. If you like training, you're probably going to like reading it because there are so many things that carry over into both realms of life, and totally supports my vision of being jacked and 75, just 75-year-old lady with muscle and a swimsuit who's rich and wealthy. Pretty excited about it.
All right. Well, that sounds like you're optimistic about the future.
I am optimistic and paranoid. Thank you, Andrew. And thanks for letting me know about this book. You're the one who discovered it. It's been really helpful. So love it. All right, everybody, have a great rest of the week, and we'll see you here next week.
Bye-bye.